Time has finally come to experience Bloober Team's highly anticipated remake of Silent Hill 2. Leading up to its release, there was a lot more anxiety than excitement. Fans weren't sure if this remake would live up to the legacy of the original or if it would be a complete misstep, a potential disgrace to one of the greatest horror games of all time. But regardless of those concerns, many of us were going to buy it either way. When I finally got to play it, I was astonished by the changes made to the gameplay and the environments. What surprised me even more was how much I ended up appreciating those changes. I'm getting ahead of myself though, so stick around as I dive into the new gameplay mechanics, reimagined level designs like Woodside Apartments and Brookhaven Hospital, and most importantly, the reason I believe this remake succeeded, Bloober Team's clear understanding and deep respect for the original Silent Hill 2. Earlier this year, I played Silent Hill 2 for the first time, and it didn't take long for me to understand why this game is held in such a high regard. It's not just nostalgia, the game achieved so much within the technical limits of the PlayStation 2, and that's what makes it so impressive. Taking the iconic fog, for instance, most people associate Silent Hill with this thick, eerie mist, but it was originally a technical workaround. The PS2 couldn't render the entire town and all the monsters at once, so the developers used the fog to mask those limitations. It's a brilliant example of how creative problem solving became part of the game's atmosphere. Beyond the visuals, the sound design in Silent Hill 2 is equally groundbreaking. Akira Yamaoka's ear soundscape plays tricks on the player's minds, random footsteps, distant whispers, unsettling noises, further immersing you in the experience. Decades later, the sound design remains iconic and continues to influence horror games. When you take a deep dive into the development of Silent Hill 2, you can find some very intriguing interviews from the developers talking about all the little insane things that they did in order to bring the experience to life. Looking at the characters, they didn't really use motion capture back then because they felt that it couldn't capture the little muscles twitching around your face whenever someone's making an expression. Rather, they animated everything by hand. What Team Silent achieved was nothing short of remarkable, creating a game that evokes real fear using polygonal characters that don't even look realistic by today's standards. It's an incredible feat. When I first played Silent Hill 2 in the HD collection, I found it impossible to put down. Every time I paused, I just felt the urge to jump back in. That to me is the gold standard of a great game. Something you just can't stop playing, like a book you can't put down. Seasoned veteran players of Silent Hill 2 understand that it's more than just a game. It's a psychological journey. The minimal use of dialogue, cutscenes, and heavy expositions lets the player uncover the story at their own pace through notes, clippings, and objects scattered around the town. The result, a deep character analysis of James Sunderland, told in a subtle, haunting way. However, this does mean some major story points can easily be missed if you rush through it. James interacts with only a handful of characters: Angela, Maria, Eddie, Laura, and Mary, but each of them play a critical role, both in the lore of Silent Hill and in James' personal journey. They all face their own demons, and in a way they serve as reflections of James himself. Their stories are so rich that I've often wondered what it would be like to play through each of their perspectives. In fact, in the HD remaster you can play as Maria, which was a very cool addition. Even now, there are countless theories and discussions about the multiple endings of Silent Hill 2. Entire YouTube channels are dedicating its symbolism and hidden meanings, which is a testament to the game's lasting legacy and its ability to continue captivating audiences. As I mentioned at the start of the video, there were many concerns surrounding the remake. One major worry was the team in charge of bringing this horror gem into the 2020s, Bloober Team. Bloober had developed a few psychological horror titles like Layers of Fear from 2016, the Blair Witch game in 2019, and most recently, The Medium. Layers of Fear was a breakout hit and a post-Silent Hill 2 psychological horror, but the scale of their previous game was nowhere near that of a beloved IP like Silent Hill 2. Fans were understandably nervous, but they trust this relatively new developer to honor and even iterate on the foundation laid by Team Silent. The developers' original approach to themes such as guilt, trauma, and redemption were key to the design of the game, so would Bloober bring their own interpretation and potentially change the core essence of Silent Hill 2? Furthermore, Bloober's previous game leaned more heavily on overt, in-your-face horror elements, and fans were worried that the Bloober might bring this approach to Silent Hill 2, sacrificing the original slow-burn psychological dread for jump scares or more obvious horror moments rather than the silent, unknown fear that plagues your mind. The first couple of trailers for the remake also sparked concern. It wasn't just the updated graphics that stood out, but also the character design changes. While the iconic monsters of Silent Hill 2 remained relatively the same, James, Maria, Eddie, Angela, and Laura all look noticeably different. The redesign of Angela in particular caused the most uproar among fans, with many taking to Reddit and other forums to voice their discontent. Further fueling the skepticism were unavoidable comparisons to the Resident Evil remake, which had set a high bar for modern survival horror adaptations. James' redesign in particular was criticized by some fans, with memes circulating that labeled him Leon Kennedy from Wish. The characters in the the original Silent Hill 2 felt like ordinary people trapped in extraordinary circumstances, and many fans were concerned that the remake would lose this grounded realism by making James and the others look too polished or heroic. There was also concern about the overall art style for the remake. While the graphical improvements were impressive, fans felt that the grainy, foggy aesthetic of the original played a crucial role in the game's atmosphere. The original's lower resolution graphics unintentionally added to its eerie, dreamlike quality, and fans feared that cleaning up the visuals for modern consoles could strip away that raw, unsettling atmosphere. The fog wasn't just a visual trick, it was integral to the game's oppressive, claustrophobic feeling. Another very small point of worry came from Bloober's previous technical issues. The medium suffered from noticeable frame drops at launch, which raised concerns about the playability of the Silent Hill 2 remake, especially on consoles. The core issue here is that Silent Hill 2 fans, they have a deep attachment to the original. For example, I have a friend, shout out Snoopy, who was disappointed when I chose to play the HD collection versions with the updated voice acting. See, for them, and many others, the original voice acting, although awkward and somewhat cheesy, carried its own charm. Would changing this impact the tone of the game? To many, the original performance of James was key to reaching the emotional core of the character. The imperfect, almost awkward delivery of the original voice acting added to the game's raw, emotional core. James' stilted dialogue wasn't just a product of its time, it contributed to the sense that he was a broken man grappling with unbearable guilt. Another major worry was whether the Bloober team would make significant changes to key parts of the gameplay. Fans were particularly worried about changes to the game's iconic puzzles. In the original, these puzzles were just challenges. They were woven into the psychological fabric of the game. Simplifying them for modern audience could take away some of the immersion that made the original so memorable. Tampering with these beloved elements was a huge risk, and fans feared the worst. Bloober likely knew this would be controversial and that many fans would resist these changes until they had a chance to experience them firsthand. The biggest change in Silent Hill 2 actually came from the shift of the original fixed camera angles to an over-the-shoulder perspective, a decision likely influenced by modern titles like the Resident Evil remakes and The Last of Us. This updated camera style allows the environment to feel more alive, drawing the player deeper into the eerie atmosphere of the town. Combat too feels more personal and intense. Encounters with enemies like nurses or bosses in confined spaces now feel more interactive and immediate rather than a matter of dodging from corner to corner like in the original. That said, the fixed camera angles in the original create a different kind of tension. By controlling what the player could see, they heightened the psychological horror that Silent Hill 2 is renowned for. The concern going into this remake was whether the shift to an over-the-shoulder view would lessen the fear factor, turning it into more of an action-driven experience. However, I felt that the Bloober team successfully adapted the gameplay errors to fit this new design choice. The changes to the layout of locations like the apartments and hospital made the over-the-shoulder perspective feel natural without sacrificing the underlying horror. Throughout my first playthrough, admittedly on the hard difficulty with hard puzzles, I still found myself dreading what was around the next corner. Limited ammo, scarce health items, and enemies lurking in the shadows maintained a sense of vulnerability from the original. While combat felt more refined, it wasn't without its own sense of challenge. James still moves a bit clunkily during fights, especially when wielding melee weapons, like the pipe or the wooden board. More than once, I died because I expected James to react quicker than he did, and those moments of hesitation were brutally punished by enemies. One aspect I noticed that compared to the original, where it was sometimes easier to dash past enemies, the remake forced me to be more cautious. I often found myself turning off my flashlight and sneaking past enemies, hoping they wouldn't notice me, or that I wasn't about to walk into another lurking threat. These moments preserve the tension and fear that defined the original, while making the remake its own unique experience. In the end, the gameplay changes felt true to the Silent Hill 2 horror experience, but also helped shape the remake into something new and equally engaging. It didn't just replicate the original, it built on it. Without spoiling later areas of the game, as I feel that one of the biggest reasons to play the remake is the new element of surprise on puzzles and new redesigns, I want to talk about the redesigns of the Woodland apartments. First, reaching the apartments used to be a much simpler go and find the key at this spot. Now there is an added puzzle to the iconic Neely's bar that the player has to play through in order to reach the first main area of the game. This change likely serves as a brief portion to familiarize the players with the new gameplay mechanics, as well as a simpler puzzle to get the gears turning. This gave life to an area of the game that can sometimes be overlooked, and I found myself trying to open every single door in the town, and even got a trophy for trying. Once James finally reaches the apartments, the outside looks very similar to the original game, but once you enter, you find yourself into a completely new area. Some of the things that stuck out to me was that the home base of the area was on the first floor, and that was also where the big puzzle of the apartments was located. Not to worry though, there were still key apartments that were very much the same, like where James finds the flashlight, the iconic body sitting in front of the TV, although with the improved graphics they have chosen to cover their face, if you know you know. Further, the key story cutscenes from the apartments are still there. With some updated dialogue, there are new puzzles to solve throughout the apartments that require you to think outside the box, and are still fun and intricate enough. One of the things I will say is that there is a constant homage to the original game. You will interact with certain mementos of the original game, almost like the dev team was saying, yeah, we remember that puzzle was here too, and we also loved it. Not only that, but the main medallion puzzle is updated, and honestly, playing it on hard really stumped me, as now there are 3 separate riddles, and the medallions are 2-faced rather than just one. The biggest shift in the area redesigned to me was actually the other world. Once you reach the other world in the apartments, you will find things have moved quite a bit. Everything is much more grimy and rusted. Looking at the other world areas in the game was cool because I feel that it utilized certain art designs from other Silent Hill entries. These areas were also much darker and combat heavy. In the apartments, they reworked the iconic grandfather clock puzzle and expanded it into another hour or 2 worth of engaging gameplay. These puzzles were smart and challenging, and from the get-go I understood that Bloober was not going to be filling this game with random content to expand the length of the game. Very early on, I could tell that all of the redesigns and gameplay changes were going to be meaningful iterations of the original game that pushed the limits of what horror can be and what Silent Hill 2 could be in the 2020s. Brookhaven's hospital also received a very similar treatment, with its iconic locations and puzzles being reimagined in ways that feel familiar yet unsettling. While I won't spoil too much here, the atmosphere and redesigned areas will undoubtedly leave a lasting impression. When we take a step back from the refocused redesigns of specific areas and look at the overall visual and audio atmosphere in the Silent Hill 2 remake, does it still capture that essence of the original game? Well, if we look at the reactions of the Silent Hill subreddit, from newcomers to seasoned veterans, I would say the answer is a resounding yes. Players both new and old are either horrified or oddly at peace, perhaps experiencing a mixture of both emotions, a testament to the remake's ability to recreate the eerie atmosphere of Silent Hill 2. The graphical improvements make full use of modern technology to build on the foundation of the original. The grotesque nature of enemies, for instance, is now even more unsettling. The infamous moments of dark humor, like James sticking his hands down a dirty toilet and digging through rotten trash in the other world, are even more stomach churning. These scenes capture that gut-wrenching feeling of disgust in a way that the original couldn't, and just thinking about them while writing the script makes me queasy. This is where the updated graphics genuinely enhance the horror experience, deepening the immersion in the disturbing world of Silent Hill.
We absolutely love the original soundtrack of Silent Hill 2. It basically made me pursue the career of a composer and sound designer, and we really wanted to bring back as many of the old tracks as possible to the remake.
They still kept a lot of Akira Yamaoka's haunting soundscape in the 2024 remake, and it still works incredibly well. The iconic score paired with the remake's enhanced sound design elevates the experience even further. And if you play this game with a PS5 controller, it adds an even deeper layer of immersion, as the audio coming through the controller makes everything feel that much closer. I will say, at times, I felt like it was really loud, and if you're playing this on a PS Portal, it can get a little bit annoying, but in my opinion, the best way to play Silent Hill 2 is with headphones on. The whispers, the distant footsteps, the unsettling car sounds blend with reality, heightening the sense of dread the longer you play. Something that stuck out to me was that Bloober's team and the original team Silent, Akira Yamaoka, they both understood the importance of silence in the game. Silence is scary. Not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing where you're going, not hearing anything can be terrifying.
And we really wanted to recreate that silence, but in a different way. You sit in a place for 10 minutes and really tune yourself to the environment that you're sitting in. You can actually hear a lot, especially when you close your eyes.
Throughout my playthrough, it became very clear that this remake wasn't just an attempt to cash in on Silent Hill 2's legacy. Instead, Bloober Team demonstrated a deep understanding of the original themes, story, and characters. They didn't just recreate the game, they enhanced it. Larger, more subliminal themes from the original are brought to the forefront through interactive lore, expanded dialogue for characters like Maria, and redesigning character models that add more life and depth. In the past, we have seen remakes that completely miss the mark, games that feel more like products slapped with an updated graphics just to sell you copies. Often, these remakes seem to me like they were created by developers who wanted to make their own game and ended up delivering a strange blend of an original classic and their unfulfilled creative visions. But with Bloober, it's clear that Silent Hill 2 is as close to their hearts as it is to ours. The various collectibles and hidden interactions serve as respectful callbacks to the original, and you can sense the hesitation to change key aspects of the game. For example, the small room where James first fights Pyramid Head is still intact, a nod to the original that fans will immediately recognize. Bloober's team's restraint and reverence for moments like this show you they understand understand what makes Silent Hill 2 special. There are plenty more examples that you might discover throughout your own playthrough, but I won't spoil them for those who are still planning to dive into this experience. To wrap everything up, the biggest reason why I believe the Silent Hill 2 remake has surpassed expectations comes down to one word: balance. Bloober's team pulled off an impressive balancing act between introducing new gameplay, environments, and staying true to the core essence that made the original such a masterpiece. They didn't just throw modern game mechanics at it to make it more marketable or sacrifice the psychological depth for more action-oriented horror. Instead, they carefully considered what would improve the experience while respecting the original soul. At the heart of this success is Bloober Team's clear understanding of what made Silent Hill 2 special in the first place. They approached this remake not just as developers, but as fans, with a deep respect for the original material. They didn't simply recreate the game, they expanded and built upon it, allowing the remake to stand as its own entirely while paying homage to the past. It's this faithful yet innovative approach that makes the Silent Hill 2 remake not just a tribute to the original, but a modern classic in its own right. Ultimately, the remake excels because it knows what to change and, more importantly, what to leave untouched. For fans, new and old, it offers an experience that feels both nostalgic and fresh, reinforcing Silent Hill 2's legacy as a timeless masterpiece in horror gaming. Despite initial fears surrounding the Silent Hill 2 remake, it's clear that the game has exceeded expectations. Bloober Team's careful balance between modern improvements and respect for the original's essence ensures that the remake stands as both a faithful tribute and a fresh, immersive experience. For newcomers, it offers a gripping introduction to one of the most influential horror games ever made, while longtime fans still appreciate the thoughtful updates and meaningful nods to the classic moments that made Silent Hill 2 unforgettable. Playing Silent Hill 2 is such a rewarding experience. Horror as a genre allows us to confront and explore our deepest fears, and by navigating through them, we often come out the other side stronger. The Silent Hill 2 remake encapsulates this perfectly. It's a game that doesn't just scare you, but challenges you emotionally and psychologically. I absolutely recommend playing the Silent Hill 2 remake, whether you're a first timer or a fan returning to the fog-covered streets of Silent Hill. And if you've never played the original, I encourage you to try it and at least watch a playthrough to fully appreciate the differences and understanding the level of care Bloober Team has poured into this remake.
But I'm actually old enough to have played the original Silent Hill 2 when it came out, and without any exaggeration, it was a life-changing experience. I don't think I'd be doing what I do now had I not played it at that point in time. And a lot of the impact it had to do with James and the way the game portrayed his inner struggle in ways that were just groundbreaking.